Let's talk about emotional intelligence. What is emotional intelligence? To get to grips with this content, we need to explain but the origins, the nature, the literacy, the expression, why is it significant, control, and then also how do we develop it further? How can we increase this? Now, if we struggle with emotional intelligence, we usually struggle with poor communication skills as well. With poor communication skills, it causes us to have trouble establishing and maintaining relationships, and conflict management also comes into play, which is difficult. Low self confidence, low acceptance is also there. And because we don't know ourselves that well, we also have fewer goals than what we should have had, and then less motivation because we don't know what makes me get into action. And we can also result into something like alcoholism, where we abuse drugs and also other difficulties. That's just trying to cover up this difficulty that we have. I've asked a couple of people, but what makes them happy? And they gave me this list of things that makes them happy. Something like money is usually on top of the list, and that's fine, but it's not really money. If you ask why money, people usually say because I like spending it. Okay, so it's not really money, it's the spending of money that you like. But it's not really the spending, it's more like getting something after spending it. So why do you want more stuff? Because it felt like I didn't have enough growing up. Everyone else had it, but I didn't. So actually, when we dig into this, it's not really money. It comes down to it's rather this thing of where I wanted to belong. I wanted to be the same as other people. I didn't want to be left out. Okay. With emotional intelligence, there's this nice definition that Goleman said, and he came up with emotional intelligence initially. He said emotional intelligence is one of the most beneficial skills that we can develop. You don't just have to develop it. Emotional intelligence refers to the capacity to react, not just to reflect, not just to react to any given situation, but actually it encompasses a unique human capacity to think about emotion. Now, there's some components that we need to pay attention to, and that's something like emotional awareness. Emotional awareness is just you being able to feel your own emotions. Emotional literacy comes down to naming those emotions that you feel. And then emotional control. Emotional control is where you have the ability to express your emotions, your feelings appropriately. And then executive function is using your emotions to propel you into achieving your goals. And then communication skills also increases the more our emotional intelligence goes up. So one of Albert Ellis's famous models is it's an ABC system where there's a stimulus, activating stimulus that happens. Then there's a belief around what does this mean? And then there's consequences. So we'll talk about the traffic light in a moment. So when we have to explain emotions, it comes down to, yes, the origins of it, but what's the nature of emotions? Why do you have it? And it pretty much comes down to this idea that your emotions is almost like fuel, it's like energy that propels you. And if you don't pay attention to it, it's going to happen anyway. So it's either consciously, subconsciously, that's going to be, it's going to be generated from. And if we don't pay attention to it, it bottles up and eventually it comes out, usually when least expected or most inappropriately, it comes out. So paying attention to it helps us to not fall prey to overreacting or even underreacting. So emotional intelligence, when it comes to literacy, it talks about being able to name this feeling that you're feeling and being able to say, but this is how I feel, communicating that to someone else. So the expression of emotions can either be inappropriately or appropriately. We are aiming for it to be appropriately. But then we need to be aware of it. We need to validate, acknowledge what I'm feeling. And then we can act on, okay, how am I going to deal with this emotion? If we don't acknowledge it, validate it, even aware of it, then it will come out as compulsive behavior. Some illnesses, actually physical illnesses, comes from feelings that just wasn't expressed, or expressed inappropriately. So we need to be able to express this emotion that we feel. In order to do that, we first need to be aware of it. We need to acknowledge it. We need to validate it. We need to not be frightened of it. It's not going to overwhelm it. Even if you cry, you will not drown the world. And then, if we are able to do that, this turns us to help us to achieve this goal where we see where it comes from. And that's necessary for us to know, because if we don't know where it comes from, we are unable to see, but what is the unmet need that we had that caused this? Many times we have an unmet need. That's just something that it's a need that we had that wasn't met. By knowing what it is, now we can get it met. So this is empowering thing to do. Now, see emotions is not the bad guy. It shouldn't control you, but it's almost like a wake-up call telling you, stop, stop, stop. Let's just think about this. Let's see where this comes from. So to be able to have emotional control, some techniques that's beneficial for us is something like having an empty chair just sitting in front of you. And you can have a talk to this empty chair about your feelings. You can also keep a journal, writing out. The idea of all of these techniques is that it's getting out this thing that you feel. Something like writing letters, drawing a picture of how you feel. Something like seeing the humor in the situation. Something like deep breathing as well. And also relaxing your muscles. Many times people are sticking their shoulders, their hands, they walk around like this, crunching their fist. So just trying to open it on purpose, relaxing your shoulders, taking deep breaths helps us as well. There's activity as well, brain gym, that's also beneficial in this situation. Physical exercise is always something that benefits, I want to say all people, but I haven't met all people, but it's generally, it's a good thing. Also visualizing how this thing can be resolved. So see it almost like a traffic light that has a red light, which means stop. So when your emotions are triggered, just stop a moment. Think about what you're going to do, and then do what you're going to do. So this is coming back to Alice's model as well. Stop, the activating event. What is your belief around this? And then action. Okay. So with emotional competency, it comes down to we can either have a personal competency, something like self-awareness, and this is the subcategories that you can work on if you want to increase your self-awareness. Also, still personal competency, but self-regulation. How can you manage yourself? Still personal competency, motivation, increasing your motivation. Social competency. Now we're talking about empathy. How can you increase your empathy? Social skills. So that is ways that we can increase our emotional intelligence so that we can become more mature in our emotions. And that's what emotional intelligence